Hi, it's Randy Rolfe here from the Institute for Creative Solutions, and I'm sharing foundational concepts about vibrant health through natural living. Today, I want to share 7 reasons to avoid genetically modified organisms. And these are dominant in our major food crops like soy and corn. So they're not only being fed to us and put in a lot of our processed foods, but also fed to our animals. So we really need to take a hard look at them. And a lot of other genetic manipulations are going on in some other foods. So we need to think hard about this. And our government has not taken a hard look at it and what its effects are. So I've been sharing a series on how to check if the food on your plate is of highest quality. And the last one I'm going to share is the problem with genetically modified foods. And what I like to say is you need genetically traditional foods. Now, a lot of scientists say, oh, we've been manipulating the genes forever by combining and that kind of thing, but that's very different. You know, hybridizing foods, there's some question about that even historically, but today going in and manipulating the genes for specific characteristics that have really nothing to do with the quality or taste or look of the food, but just for profit is definitely a question. And why they're doing it is to make the crops more resistant to the chemicals that they're putting on them, which means, number one, we're likely to get more chemicals into our diet because the food has been treated with these chemicals if it's been genetically altered to be able to tolerate more chemicals. And my dad was an infertility specialist, and he said, watch out, we're going to need a whole lot more infertility specialists because pesticides are designed to interrupt the reproductive systems of pests. And guess what? If we keep eating them, we're living beings too, and it may start affecting us. And he saw the difference in the sperm counts going down over the course of 25, 30 years of practice. So this is not anything to laugh about. So number 2 is that there's no evidence that genetically modified foods are safe. People have been eating them, sure, but do we know that it's not contributing to our obesity, to our allergies, to other kinds of chronic conditions? We don't know because there's hardly any way to study that. And the third thing is that people don't realize they think you're going in with tweezers and changing a few genes, and you know, why not fix the genes so the corn's yellower or something like that. That's not the way it is. There's at least 5 different complex steps to changing the gene and making sure you've changed it, and then it often transfers into a farm next to you that isn't using GMOs because the seeds can spread and so on. So the fourth thing is that to be able to tell whether you're looking at a gene that's been altered or not, the sun just went in, so the light changed. They add genes from shellfish or jellyfish. And so that means if you're a vegan and trying to avoid eating other kinds of creatures besides plants and seeds and berries and so on, you can't be sure with a GMO because they've got jellyfish genes in them. So that's a little footnote, but it's kind of disturbing. And that they do that because the added genes have a certain reflective quality that they can identify when they check if the particular gene that they're looking at, say a kernel of corn, has the genetically modified genes in it or not. It's this reflective thing from the jellyfish. So anyhow, That doesn't intrigue me at all. The fifth thing is that this encourages monoculture. The big companies like Monsanto, that's now been bought by a bigger company, is to sell their special seeds that have been genetically engineered as the one and only crop. Now, most traditional, healthy agricultural societies have always had diversity. There were like 300 different species of potatoes when Europeans came to the New World. And there are gene banks around the world that are trying to preserve diversity, because when our climate changes or other things change, you're going to need different versions of these foods. Already they can't find a new banana that can fight the kinds of funguses that are affecting banana groves these days. And some cultures, you know, we think of them as just one of those fruits, but some cultures, especially in Africa, are completely dependent on the banana. So monoculture is very dangerous. And so if we have more diversity, where we have our crops that are adapted to particular environments, particular regions or climates, we're much more likely to continue to have a good food supply for the peoples of the world. And the sixth thing is that there are more pesticides and herbicides. And like I said at the very beginning, you're going to get more of those into your system. And finally, there are perfectly good alternatives. What we're finding is that reusing the organic material and creating organic gardens and farms create healthier and safer foods, and they can compete as far as quantity. That's the big argument for GMOs. Oh, we can feed the world because we can produce so many crops. We already have enough food in this world to feed everyone. We've got 7 billion people where there is enough food. It's a transportation and economic issue. We can get the food to the people. And the experience in India has been huge. There are farmers in India that are killing themselves because they've bought into this monoculture with all the expensive pesticides and herbicides. And it looks wonderful the first year, maybe the second year, but by the third, fourth, fifth year, the crops are not so good. They can't afford all the chemicals. They can't afford the special altered seeds, and they give up. So the suicide rate of farmers in India is horrendous. Meanwhile, there's a number of specialist scientists that are dedicating their life to re-educating the farmers in India to do organic farming, as they have been for 5,000 years. So that's why you want to have genetically traditional foods. And luckily, the way to avoid GMOs is to make sure that what you're buying is labeled organic, because there was a big fight in Congress to try to allow GMOs in organically labeled foods, but luckily the people spoke, and that was not added as a permissible thing in organic food, in our organic foods. So if you get the organic label, chances are really, really high that there are not GMOs in there. But still, with your eggs and your milk and your meat, you do have to kind of check that they're being fed organically and not being fed GMO grains. So that's it about GMOs. Bad news. Corn and soy, 80 to 90% of those crops are GMO. So you really have to search for organic popcorn, for organic soy. If you want to have miso or tofu or soy milk, you must buy organic and to avoid the GMOs. And even wheat, people they're confused about wheat because you need to avoid it, but it's not mostly it's not GMO yet, but they do put Roundup on it at the end of the harvest. And so there is Roundup in wheat unless it's organically grown. And they put the Roundup on to make it easier to harvest and easier to clear, to replant it, but it is on the whole wheat. So many people who have problems with wheat, if they switch to organic wheat, they don't have the problem. So it's not always celiac or gluten problem. It's more often that there's just Roundup on your wheat and in the bread that's made with the wheat, and the pasta and anything that's made with wheat. So this has been a long one, but I've been traveling across the country. I'm now back in Pennsylvania instead of in California, where we were for 5 months during this amazing time trying to control the spread of the coronavirus. And I'm happy to be back with you to share some insights about vibrant health through natural living. So stay safe. Can't figure out how to turn this off.